Now let's learn how to recognize letters and sounds in the Spanish alphabet. I've already discussed in the previous video the everyday greetings in Spanish, so now you can start learning the Spanish alphabet. You must know how to recognize each letter and how each letter is called and the sound it produces. So the Spanish alphabet is composed of 30 letters. However, the Spanish sounds are more than the total number of letters, as there are instances that a letter is pronounced in various ways according to its position in a word. Also, each letter has a name different from the ABCs of English. So in here, I will show you how each letter in Spanish is called, how each one of them is pronounced, and I've prepared some examples for practice. Now let's start with alphabet A. So its name in Spanish is A, and it is pronounced as A, as in English, other. So an example of this is alto, alto, which means tall in English. And the next letter is B. B as in boy in English, or crib, about. So, for example, bien, bien, which means good. The next letter is C. So, in Spanish, C, the letter C is pronounced in two ways as ka and th. So, ka as in cup or milk, or tha as in Catherine or thin. So it depends on which vowels it follows, or say for example, when it is followed by the vowels A, O, U. So when the letter C is followed by the vowels A, O, U, you pronounce it as ka, ka, as in cuatro, cuatro, which means four. And another way to pronounce C when it is followed by the vowels E and I. So we pronounce C as tha when followed by the vowels EI, as in cinco, cinco, which means five. You don't pronounce this as cinco, but it's cinco, cinco. The next letter in the Spanish alphabet is CH, so as in ch, ch, as in child in English, or Richard. Say for example, chica, chica, which means girl. The next letter is D. So D in Spanish is pronounced in two ways. D as in doll, idea in English, or tha, as in mother, the, or then, or breathe. So one way to pronounce D as in the when used in the start of a word or a syllable. For example, donde, donde, which means where. And we can also pronounce D as the when placed in between vowels in a word. Say for example, nada, nada, which means nothing. The next letter in the Spanish alphabet is E. So E is pronounced as E, as in English, enter, let, said. Say for example, estado, estado, which means state. The next letter is F, F, as in fan, raffle, wife. So in Spanish, it is pronounced as F. For example, falso, falso, which means false. The next letter is G, which can be pronounced in two ways, as in K, like as in English, gift, dog, or a gargled K, like as in German back. So when followed by the vowels E, I. So G is pronounced as K, K when followed by the vowels A, O, U, as in gordo, gordo, which means fat. And another way to pronounce G is like a gargled K when it is followed by the vowels EI, as in gente, gente, which means person, gente. The next letter in the Spanish alphabet is H. So in Spanish, the letter H is not pronounced. So the letter H in Spanish words will make it as a silent letter, as in hasta, hasta. We don't pronounce H here. We don't pronounce this as hasta, but we pronounce this instead as hasta, hasta, which means until. The next letter is I, which is pronounced as E, as in English, income, hit, PT. For example, ídolo, ídolo, which means idol. In the Spanish alphabet is letter J. So letter J is pronounced as like a gargled K, as in German, Bach, Bach, Bach. For example, carbon, carbon. So you don't pronounce this as jabon, but carbon, carbon instead, which means soap in English. Next is letter K, which pronounced as ka, ka, as in English, kite, waki, silk. For example, kilo, kilo, as in kilo in English, which means kilo in English. The next letter is L, which is pronounced as L, as in English, light, blame, ball. Say for example, lapis, lapis, which means pencil. The next one is double L, which is pronounced as elie, elie, as in English, galleon, galleon. Say for example, lluvia, lluvia, which means rain in Spanish. In English, lluvia, lluvia. The next letter is M, which is simply pronounced as M, M, as in English, money, summit, team. For example, mal, mal, which means bad in English. The next letter is N, which is pronounced as N, N, as in English, net, tiny, green. For example, norte, norte, which means north in English. The next letter is N with a symbol here, which is pronounced as enie, enie, as in English, canyon, onion. For example, ñaque, ñaque, which means junk in English. The next letter is O, which is pronounced as O, O, as in English, Auckland, saw. For example, obra, obra, which means work in English. The next letter is P, which is pronounced as P, P, as in English, party, happy, leap. For example, pato, pato, which means duck in English. The next letter is Q, which is pronounced as K, K, as in English, kite, wacky, silk. For example, quema, quema, which means fire. Quema. That's all for now. The rest of the letters from R to Z will be discussed in the next video.